In this video, we're going to go over the bystander effect. The bystander effect is the phenomena where individuals are less likely to provide help in emergency situations when others are present. The idea is, let's say you're outside, you're walking on the street, and there's a person on a bike, and they crash into a pole and they look like they're hurt. In that situation, if you are present and there are a few other individuals present, you're pretty likely to get help for that person. However, if that same bike accident occurred and you're in a large crowd, so there are many others that are present, you're actually less likely to help that person. That's the concept of the bystander effect. And what I went over just now was just a hypothetical situation, but this has actually been demonstrated by psychologists in research studies. So in one example, the researchers recruited participants to have a group discussion. The participants were placed in individual cubicles that had microphones so they could participate in the group discussions. One of the participants was actually an experimental accomplice, one of the researchers actually, and at the beginning of the discussion, they mentioned that they were prone to seizures. Later on, during the discussion, the experimental accomplice pretended to have a seizure and called out for help. The participants, while most of them looked for help, the interesting thing is that their tendency to get help decreased as the size of the group increased. So what that means is that the researchers did the experiment with smaller groups of participants and larger groups of participants. So when you were in a small group, let's say 5 participants, when that experimental accomplice called out for help, you were very likely to look for help for that experimental accomplice. However, when you were placed in a large group, let's say a group of 20 participants, you were less likely to seek help for the experimental accomplice when they called out for help. So again, this has been demonstrated in actual psychology studies. And the last thing I want to mention is the cause of the bystander effect. It's thought that the bystander effect is due to the diffusion of responsibility in group settings. The idea being that if there are only a few people around, one of you has to help, all right? Whereas if you're in a large group setting where there are many individuals, you just need one person to help, and it doesn't have to be you. The responsibility is spread out over many individuals. Okay, that's the bystander effect. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking the bell icon for notifications. We release new videos every week covering the highest yield content on the MCAT. Plus, you can check out the video description for links to useful resources like our MCAT Prep mobile application.